Comfortable?
Yeah.
Sweet. Nice. Well, welcome to the Breaking Ice podcast. My name's Josh Ferguson. I have the lovely pleasure of sitting down today with Danny Gaudet from Délı. And you're the chief, correct?
Yeah, now I am, yeah.
That's wicked. And today we're going to hear just about him, kind of what he's up to, where he came from, what his life was like, and yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation. Welcome.
All right, on. Thanks, Josh. My first podcast, so I'm just learning as I go.
Oh, but it's easy.
Just yap?
Just yap. Yeah, that's just it, right? We sit here and we talk, so.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know. Where do you want to start? You want to start kind of
just a little bit about myself. I grew up in Délı. Stayed there till I was 79. Then I went to high school up in Inuvik. Went to residence there, Gaudet Hall. Just like pretty much almost everybody from the Sahtú. So I kind of joined those guys, and that's where I did my schooling. And after that, I moved back to the Sahtú. So I was.
And give me a little, like, paint the picture of what Délı was like when you were a kid.
When I was young, there was only probably about 250 people there. Yeah. Probably less. You know, when I was growing up, there was no RCMP, no jails, no nothing. They were all kind of like fly-in. We had actually a fairly big health center that was built back in probably the 60s, 69. And, you know, we had fly-in teachers that came in, did our school, taught us there till we were grade 8. And then after grade 8, we had to leave community to go to continue our education.
Up in Inuvik.
Yeah, up in Inuvik. And then a lot of it was traditional. A lot of people were nomadic and still lived off the land, hunting, trapping, fishing.
So give me a sense of what the annual cycle like was living off the land. Like, give me a sense of, like, in January, what were folks doing, and then through the year. Yeah,
well, Délı, you know, is this, you know, fairly young community. I mean, people started moving there in the 50s, and it was a result of the church and the school, right? And the government started kind of building a base there. Earlier in 1800s, there used to be fur trading posts there, and but people basically just went there to trade their furs. And over time, you know, because our people used to be nomadic and live literally on the other side of Great Bear Lake.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and
it's quite a distance.
Quite a distance. And then they started moving towards Délı when the church and all that came in, and they started building a permanent fort there. Well, Sir John Franklin was there in 1825, 1826 as an explorer. Yeah. And then after that, the fur trade kind of started. A lot of it was along the Mackenzie Valley, like through Toledo and stuff like that, which was Fort Norman
back then, eh? Yeah.
So our people used to actually go down there and trade. But they started bringing the forts up to Great Bear Lake. And in the end, they created these communities. And Délı, which was Fort Franklin, prior to Délı, became the main kind of the base and hub. Government started bringing the people into the communities, and once they got them to the community, just basically tied them up into the system, to get them into education and stuff like that. A lot of people struggled with that because all of a sudden their kids going to school, they're not helping out with the family, basically the family farm, right?
Yeah. I mean, well, and the system was built not the government system or the education system, but the on the land, you know, traditional system. You were expecting to have help from your family and your kids and all that kind of stuff.
Always, yeah. So if you removed some of the major players in that system, then all of a sudden you struggle all the time.
Yeah.
So when you're struggling like that, a lot of people started kind of just staying in the community and say, well, I can't do it without my kids, right? So yeah. So start living in the community and start living on the system.
And when did the fur trade kind of like subside? Like, when did people go like, you know, it's not quite worth it to spend as much time out on the land?
Well, the people there still trap. There's still guys that still, I call it hobby trapping, because they're subsidizing that with work also. Yeah. So because you can't afford to sell the furs at the rate you can before and look after your family. I think it kind of started dying off in the late 80s, going into the 90s. There was a big push in the world by the activists to kill off for trading and stuff like that. So it all started then.
Was it for environmental reasons, the thought process there?
Well, you know, look after the animals.
Sure.
Right. So
don't worry about your living.
Don't worry about your living. let the people die off.
Okay. And then I assume that the industry kind of moved to like oil exploration and things like that, and forestry.
Yeah, well, you know, on Great Bear Lake, we ended up having the uranium mine.
Oh, that's
and I'm
right.
not too sure how many people know that the uranium on Great Bear Lake was discovered in 1929-30.
Oh, that's a convenient time.
Yeah, and it was literally discovered by an elder named Bioni.
Okay.
That came from our area. And in the end, Labine ended up with it because Bioni showed him, where everything was. And Labine's the famous guy now that found it. But in reality, it was a native guy from the area that found it. And that uranium was actually used for the Nagasaki and Hiroshima bombs. Wow. And our people actually hauled that stuff, manually. They didn't use machines when they hauled it. So carried it basically in potato sacks, right?
Yeah.
So
that's hardcore.
Oh yeah, we lost all our elders due to that.
Just from cancer.
Being exposed, having being at risk and stuff like that. So.
And what kind of an impact did you see? Like what kind of an impact was losing all the elders in that sense? There was a lost generation in a sense, or
pretty much a lost generation, and they were basically the older group of the the family and stuff like that. So the transfer of knowledge, even language, the traditions and stuff like that. We struggled with that for a while, and then it was at the same time too that we started getting pulled into the communities, and that started changing everything, right?
That's a lot of change all at once. You lose a generation of elders, and then your way of life starts changing at the same time.
Yeah,
it's where do you establish your identity?
Yeah. And so we're working with that and trying to figure out, okay, who are we today? Right? Mm-hmm. We realized we changed lots, and we have adapted over time to everything that was in and around us. So, okay, now who are we today? Mm-hmm. Who do you want to be tomorrow? So we start thinking about those type of things. We have a lot of elders there that told us a lot of stories, and prophets telling us prophecies about what's going to happen in the future. Mm-hmm. We're lucky to have that at home. Our elders today still preach about it. We actually believe in it. Everything we do in life is and governance and all that other stuff is in and around those stories.
Okay.
So
they're guided by those stories.
Stories. The journey is already planned out for us, right?
So it's your guys' job to embark on that journey.
Yeah. Embark on that journey. So everything that happens to us, well, okay, we learn from it, right?
Yeah. Take it in stride.
Take it in stride and move forward, right?
Yeah. I think that's an important attitude.
Yeah.
There's so many things that happen outside of a person or community's control, and
yeah.
I heard this thing. I don't remember exactly where I heard it, but it was talking about what the word responsibility meant. And the guy that was instructing us broke it down to response, like what your ability to respond is.
Yeah.
So you have this responsibility to, take what comes in stride.
Yeah.
And then how you react to it defines your character and defines your community and so much and so forth.
Yeah, and you can apply that to every individual's life, right? Because,
absolutely.
Your reality is you're faced with all of these hurdles and your obstacles that you run into. What strengthens you is you actually learn from it and you deal with it all. And if you give up at some point, then maybe your journey's almost over because you decided that you're checking out, right?
So in the arc of the I don't know, timeline, whatever, journey, story, narrative of Délı, is there an obvious low point, and kind of where is that in comparison to where the community is today?
Low point, what do you?
I'm not sure. Maybe culture being at risk or people being lost in terms of their identity. You said in terms of all the elders dying from cancer and there being this really drastic change. So I'm imagining that maybe at that point it was kind of whoa, what's going on? Because Délı in my eyes right now seems like they have a really good grasp on their identity.
Yeah. We always try to keep our identity front and center. Mm-hmm. Like I said, it's changed over time, but we've always tried to keep it front and center. And like I said, we're very fortunate that we still have our elders, a few elders there that, pretty much built the community, right? And they kept the drum strong, the music strong, the dances strong, the stories strong, and all their prayers. They're always praying. That's all part of our community. And yes, there's always these struggles, and I don't know if we have a low point, but we get to a point where you have all these challenges, and for example, one right now is the hard drugs that are coming into the communities. I mean, we're not immune to that happening in our community. We're just hoping that we're strong enough and that we've taught enough that people could actually refuse taking it, refuse buying it, refuse selling it, and know our culture, our identity is more important than just changing, and destroying it this way, right?
Yeah. And do you kind of view a barrier, something that can protect the community from, those, what's the word? Like the drugs, but the
elements.
Yeah, the elements in that sense, like how strong your culture is helps people avoid that kind of stuff. Like if they have a strong identity and they identify with the culture and people are united, it's easier to kind of say no.
Yeah. Well, we struggle with that. I mean, everybody struggles with it because life's changed. Everything in and around them has changed. I mean, when we grew up, and even before me, thank the elders and thank everybody, our great grandparents and stuff like that, because they had a hard life. Like they live in an environment where there was no forgiveness, right?
Yeah.
You worked out there minus 40, 50 below, and you don't have a house, you don't have a furnace, you don't have running water, you don't have any of that. You're just living within the bush. You are part of that element.
Yeah.
And, over the years, they've managed to get us to where we are today.
Yeah.
Right. And they did that by being independent, strong. They taught they taught their children to do the same and all those type of things. Well, we've gotten kind of away from that, right? We've gotten away from where we become very dependent on other people doing it for us, or other programs doing it for us, or somebody else doing it for us. We're not 100% there, but the reality is we're there with a lot of our people, and we need to figure out a way to bring them back to being independent and not so much being self-dependent or dependent on other things, right?
Yeah.
So we got a lot of work to do. And I think we haven't lost our people. We just need to help them find their journey back to being strong, independent people.
Yeah, it takes a lot of will of character to live like that. That's not easy.
Yeah, it's not easy, but if we set the tone, we set the program and how to pull that off, and people buy into it, I think we can get there.
Well, yeah, and the payoff's huge.
No, huge. Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you kind of conceptualize your role as chief? How do you carry that responsibility? How does that feel?
I had a good session with my community just the other day on reporting on all our activities, and one of the thoughts came to my mind, and I actually said it out loud, was, I've only been a chief for a year and a half, and I said, but I've worked for chiefs pretty much all my life, and I've been working very hard on community development and keeping our community active and all those type of things. But I said, you know what? There is no book on how to be a chief. There's no guide. There's no nothing. You just kind of, okay, you're the chief. What do you want to do? Where do you want to take your people and stuff like that? You think that way, but at the end, we need to look at our situation and say, well, okay, this is what I see. You guys tell me, what do you want me to do? Right? Explain to me what should we do to get out of this, right? And I've been trying to work very hard on trying to get people to come back to the table and help out. Today I noticed a post. A couple of friends were driving along, and then they see garbage on the side of the road, and they decided to pick it all up. They just went along that bush road, and they just picking up all the garbage, and about half a truckload of garbage. And I thought to myself, that's what I'm talking about, right? Have some sense of pride in your community, and look after your community. It belongs to you. So you're playing on a sports team, you're proud of your school, right? Well, this is no different. Be proud of your community.
It's funny how much it feels like those details don't matter, but really the details is what builds the foundation.
Oh, you should have saw me just smiling and the pride I had, and those two stepping up to do that. And I said, wow, that's what we need. That's what we're missing, right?
Yeah. And well, I studied leadership in school, and I spent a lot of time leading groups of kids and whatnot. But it's interesting, obviously not to the caliber that you're working in, but it's interesting.
It's all the same.
Kind of. You got more responsibility than I had. But it's all about kind of like holding the container so that people feel safe to express themselves. And then it's a very selfless thing to do, if you're doing it right.
Yeah.
Because it's not about what you want particularly.
No. It's got nothing to do with you.
No. But people confuse that so much.
Yeah.
You know?
Very, very, very confused because they think, you're just doing it for yourself.
Yeah.
And the reality is that, if you're a good true leader, you do it for your community, but you also do it in a way that it builds them up, right? Mm-hmm. And it gives you a sense of pride that's happening in over time and stuff like that. But, being a leader is can't be anything about you, right? And so everything you personally have kind of falls by the wayside. I know a lot of good leaders in the past have done that, and when they're done, they're sitting at home and they don't have a job anymore because they're not even allowed to claim for EI, for example. So when you're done, your paycheck's done, you're done. You can't even go to an EI program to say, well, I'm going to sit on this for 6 months while I figure out getting a new job.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people that are leaders struggle with that over time and over the years, right?
Well, and there's a deep sense of meaning that you get when you're leading.
Yeah.
And once that's over, I feel like it could be difficult to replace that if you don't have the drive to, or maybe the direction. Yeah. Like, where do I go from here?
Well, I just experienced that probably back in 2016 because I worked with my elders in the community.
Yeah.
And the leaders negotiating our self-government agreement.
That's right.
Did that for 18 years. By the time we got off and running with it, it was 20 years. But I walked out the door September 1st, 2016. I said, I'm done because I spent over 40 years doing community development with our people. Not only in Délı but other places. But I realized, after a week or two, I had no clue who I was. I didn't know what I was going to do. I had my own heavy equipment company. That's great. That as long as I got on the machines, I was paying bills. But the reality is that I didn't know who I was, and so I just literally started jumping in a boat whenever I can and went on a lake and stayed out for a while. And when COVID hit, I stayed out for a month and a half in the bush. And it literally took me almost 2 years to figure out who I was, but literally had to go back in life till I was about 7 years old and realize, you know what? I've always loved technology. And I always dreamt about fixing things with technology, right? So, okay, now I get 2016, I think it's started working on an idea about building a company around coming up with solutions for problems. And basically, I've done that all my life. I said, I've always been a solving problem. Give me your solution or your problems, and I'll come up with solutions for you. And I thought, that'd be an exciting job. So I don't look at work as work. It's got to be exciting.
Yeah.
I want to do it every day. So I created a company called Indigenous Concepts and Solutions.
Okay.
I haven't gotten it off the ground because COVID hit and all this type of stuff, and I just realized, okay, let's slow down here. Let's retool it. And then all of a sudden I became chief, and I said, well, shit, now I got to retool it again. So just hang on a sec, but I'll get there. But that's exciting stuff. But you're right. When you leave leadership role and you've been doing it so long, and you start realizing, okay, what do I do now, right?
Yeah.
And you live in the north, isolated, remote communities and stuff like that. It's okay. Where do I go? What do I do? It's difficult. So
well, it's one of those things. Like when I worked back and I did more active leadership. I worked and I directed a summer camp, and we had 50 staff, and then hundreds of kids that would come.
Yeah.
And there was so much time mentoring and working with kids and kind of helping guide and things like that. And then we moved up here, and I was like, whoa, this is really different.
Yeah.
I have my kids and my wife, and that's a great outlet for that.
Yeah.
But you can also it's interesting how much you can enact those skills, to just help friends.
Yeah.
You know, and it doesn't necessarily provide the same kind of depth of meaning as, you know, specifically being in a leadership role for a community that's like more formal.
Yeah.
But I think that if we can help teach each other those skills, it can go a long way in terms of bringing everybody up.
Yeah. And, you know, like a lot of people say, well, we've got all these issues that we've got to deal with, and, you know, our young generation's losing culture, language, all that type of stuff. But, you know, number one, I think we got to really start working on figuring out or explaining that parents need to go back to parenting. A parent needs to be a good parent. And, you know, for thousands of years, it was the parents or the grandparents that transferred knowledge to the children. They're the ones that taught them, not the education system.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Right? So that's we really need to strengthen that, and how we support the parents get back into parenting. There's a lot of great parents out there, tons, but there's lots that struggle also. And
it's almost like we need to help redefine the concept where it's not like it's either parenting or school.
Yeah.
Right? Like school's useful. School's useful for technical concepts and socializing and things like that, but there's no replacement for the amount of love and dedication that a parent can put into their kids.
Yeah.
Because no matter how much you say it out loud, teachers can't do that.
Yeah.
Like they can put a lot of love and dedication, but it's not their kids.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, the parenting is all teaching.
Yeah.
Right? They were the teachers.
Yeah.
Before
and
the school
leadership
came around, right? And then leadership and all that other stuff. So we removed that element from the parents. Right? We did that when we sent the kids to residential school.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
the parents had nothing to do anymore. Like personally, I don't really talk too much about my family, but there's 9 of us, and I seen the oldest ones take off to school, and then the next older ones took off, and the next ones got off. I was the last one in the family.
You're the youngest?
Yeah, I was the youngest, but I ended up being the only one at home. And prior to that, man, I had a lot of fun. You know, I had all the love in the world. My brothers and sisters were there, and we played, we built, we did all those things that kids would do, right? And all of a sudden, one day it's gone.
Yeah.
It's disappeared. And then when you get into residence, you say, well, I can't wait to get there because my brothers and sisters are there, but at the same time, I get to hang out with all these other kids.
Yeah.
And it was a different feeling, different setting when you got there. You know, even your own brothers and sisters were kind of like, hey, we can't act like this in here, right? We gotta. Yeah,
it's like a little more. It's more foreign, so it's not as comfortable.
Yeah, and more rigid. You know, other guys would be laughing at you. Oh, look, he's playing with his brother there. You know, it's just different, right? So you kind of backed away from those family things that you used to do, and it was kind of a wake up call for me. You know, years down the road, wondering why I'm the way I am, right? I say, well, I'm don't let people get too close to me. I don't, you know, love like I should, or all that type of stuff. So it's different, and you know that causes a lot of problems with. Okay, well now we're going to shut these residents down, and then we're going to give you back your kids, and the parents at home say, well, what do I do?
Yeah,
you know, and. It's not like they can't do it. It's just, it's all of a sudden it's different. And okay, how do I adjust here?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was gonna ask you, do you think that, because I always like to think of like, well, what's the hard work that we can be doing, right?
Oh.
Well, and it's funny because like obviously the hard work is vulnerable and it's scary and it challenges you and the thing is, if you don't do the hard work, then you let it go.
Yeah.
So you were just talking about kind of not letting people get too close to you and whatnot. Do you think that like that might be difficult for you, vulnerable and scary, but do you think that would enhance your leadership? Do you think, or I'm just kind of wondering how you think about that?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I never gave it too much thought, but you know, I know how I feel. I know how my heart is. Like if people are struggling, I'll do everything I can to be there, and I do that before I was a leader, right? If I seen guys on the street struggling, I do whatever I can to help them, right? And my heart is there. Like I do that all the time. It's you know, a lot of times, like, I mean, you don't want people to struggle. You want to help them. You want to build them up. You know, and I've always tried to pride myself on reaching out to people that I know are struggling and say, "Hello, how you doing?" And just like a call in. You know, a lot of the stuff that you're talking about and trying to say, well, what's difficult to get going here. I think number one is we just got to believe in ourselves individually, and you know, you got to say, look, I want to do something for myself, right? And you get up in the morning and say, I'm going to do something today that's positive. Start with small, simple things. And, you know, like I was talking about earlier today, I said the couple there, they're picking up garbage.
Yeah.
I said, that's beautiful. That's positive. And, you know, I'm sitting over here and feeling happy because of that, right? It's little things like that you see people do that can affect an entire community.
Well, I was going to say the impact was so much more than the garbage not being on the road.
Yeah, that's had nothing to do with it. The garbage, it is cleaner now, but the reality, convenient. But it has big impact. And the other thing we do too, we try very hard to keep our kids busy. Yeah. Right, and
that's profoundly important, I think.
Very, very important. Yeah. We know we have single parents. They're doing whatever they can to make things happen and stuff like that. It's costly to get into sports. It's costly to go out on the land now. Like you buy a snowmobile, you want to go out on the land, go hunting, minimum, at least get $20,000 ready. Yeah. And, you know, well, okay, forget it. I'm not going to go do my traditional stuff because I need my snowmobile, or else I'm just going to keep walking until I get whatever species I'm looking for in terms to eat and stuff like that. But it's changed a lot where it's become too expensive for a lot of our members to actually participate in their own culture and activities in sports and stuff. So what we been doing for years, and this again even before we were chief, but I always volunteer and help out as much as I can, but try to get it so our youth are always registered in sports, and we cover that cost. We pay for it. We raise the funds for them. To set a team like to Yellowknife for basketball, for example, well, you only need 5 players on court, but you take 8 to 10 people, your coach and whatever chaperone you need. Well, get ready to spend just $22,000 just on the flights, let alone the hotel and stuff like that, right? And the students can't afford that. The parents can't afford that. Yeah. Right? So we try to step in, and we realize that keeping the youth busy helps keep them out of trouble. Yeah. Right. And it also teaches them leadership, team playing, supporting one another. There's so much that goes into it. You learn from just being involved and participating.
Well, I was thinking just about Délı here has a killer hockey team. Yeah. But say they go to Yellowknife or Inuvik or wherever to compete, and you have a group of youth playing hockey, you learn those leadership skills. Like if they all want to win. Yeah. Right. I'm just gonna hang up on that.
Yeah, no problem.
More things ring. If the kids have the common goal of winning, you don't have to just be the captain to lead. Yeah. They can identify, how can I help to do that? And those are small leadership things that can help them give meaning for each other. Yeah. And then if they succeed, oh man. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's fun, right? And what we're trying to do too is do the same thing on the land, right? You go out in the bush. There's certain things you got to do when you first get out there. You got to make sure your shelter's put up, right? It's one of the common things that everybody needs, shelter. And what else you need? Well, you need food. Yeah. Otherwise, you're not going to make it. Certainly need water. You need heat. Yeah. All those type of things. So there's 4 or 5 elements that you need. And then when you go in the bush, you got to do that. You don't just lay around and sit around, and then night comes and winter comes, and all of a sudden you got cold. Nothing, right? So it's even that is leadership, right? And then, but at the same time, you're teaching the culture, and they're learning the language. In the end, it's sports and participating in those type of activities and the traditional activities, in my mind, they're both the same. They're both needed.
Yeah.
And so we invest lots into that, right? So that's how we're hoping that we could change, the direction we're going.
I think that's a good plan. I think it's fundamental I think the utility that sports plays in that kind of development is, I think that time on the land is probably better.
Yeah.
But in the absence of being out there, this kind of activity is almost as good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%. And, the land, I'll tell you, is really important because it's not only just going out camping. Like I'm talking about learning about, your traditional medicines.
Yeah.
We have all the medicines out there that you have right now, you can get at the health center. Does the same, if not probably better and probably more healthier, because it's not chemicals, it's not all this processed stuff, right? But in reality, it's there. So it's going back to understanding what all those are.
Yeah.
And how do we bring it back, right? How do we make it fun? Like how do we bring it back and exciting? And we have a lot of great people out there that have been coming and stepping forward and, working on taking people in the bush and learning about all that type of stuff. So it's not only just Délı, but there's members in other communities across this country actually literally are doing that. And there's lots of good people that really enjoy doing that kind of stuff. We just need to figure out a way to help them and support them so that they can transfer that knowledge, to our people just the same way they're doing it with their own people.
Yeah, absolutely. I found, I worked at a summer camp and we would take kids on trips and stuff like that, on canoe trips. And sometimes parents would send kids there as a punishment.
Yeah.
So the kids would show up, and they'd be like, well, you're going to camp for 3 weeks. And the kids would show up and be like, oh, why are you here? Oh, well, I stole a shirt and they sent me to here as a punishment. And then the kid would have such a good time.
Yeah.
And sometimes the parents would be mad that the kid had fun.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's best case scenario.
Yeah, because they're learning, right? And then, when they go home, guess what? Maybe they start doing dishes.
Yeah.
It's like little things like that helps turn that corner, right, for the youth, because they actually realize they got to be being in a bush and not being the one that's doing nothing. And because there's a few people that do that and they depend on you to look after me, right?
Sure.
Well, they do that at home.
Yeah.
But if they learn to look after themselves in the bush, guess what? When they go back home, they're a different person. They're a different character.
And spending time in the bush gives you an appreciation for how comfortable you can be at home.
Yeah.
First of all, but then second of all, if you're someone who's not doing anything at home, and then you go to the bush and you're someone that's not doing anything in the bush, that's way more obvious when you're in the bush.
More obvious, and then you're getting skinnier. Nobody's heating you up.
Yeah. So tell me about, what's the last time you spent time on the land?
Well, I make it a point to go out every summer. I haven't done much in the winter, but every summer I try to take off for at least minimum 1 week. I try to get out at least 2 to 3 weeks throughout the summer.
And what's your preferred? Is it on the lake? Is it
on a lake, on Great Bear Lake?
Yeah.
Great Bear Lake's 33,000 square kilometers, and we're the only traditional community of 550 that live on it. It has the world record lake trout. It has fish everywhere, moose, caribou, and bears, all that kind of stuff. It's 33,000 linear kilometers.
That's
around.
Just so small. I don't know.
Well, one year I decided, you know what? Every year I'm going to go out until I finish the entire lake. So that's what I've been doing. And amazing journey, learning so much. And I bring one of my best friends with me, Maurice Modeste, and he's lived in the bush pretty much all his life. That's all he grew up on. And he's probably one of the best bush guys out there. And he knows most of the lake. And he'll let me know where he doesn't know, but we'll figure it out together as we go. But what we've been doing pretty much in the last 5 years is following the legends. There's stories and legends of on Great Bear Lake, but even down the Mackenzie River. So we're going and checking those out, right? And we stay around that area for a while, and we talk about it. And
so do you consult with elders and kind of get a sense of what legends you want to go check out? And you got like a list going or something?
Yeah, well, I'm really fortunate enough to work with the elders. For basically 20 years. And when you're negotiating self-government, you can't just, if I was just a lawyer And I just simply went into the negotiations with the federal government. It'll be lawyers yapping at, why we need this power and all that kind of stuff. We took a different approach where, the community hired me to be the negotiator, and I literally sat and listened to all the elder stories about everything. And okay, now how do I turn that into a government model that would help address what they're talking about? And so it was kind of a unique thing to sit there and listen to elders for years and learn about what was important to them. And obviously the land, water, air, plants and trees and fish are probably the most important things to our people. So to sit there and listen to them about that and say, okay, how do we get involved? How do we become governing over all of that stuff?
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of the stuff we've been doing. But taking all those stories now, when I go out and say, well, this is what the elders talked about this area. Morris, what do you think? And we talk about it, and we always bring 2 or 3 of their friends with us, and it's pretty neat, like just sitting around watching this stuff.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That is so good.
Yeah. Checking on what the stories are.
And have you had a remarkable, do you have one that stands out in your mind? Tell me about that.
Not yet, because, you're not going to hit it the first time, right?
Sure.
You know that you got to go back.
Uh-huh.
And it's the second time I like to go back because, okay, we didn't do this, we didn't do that, but we should do this to make sure that we verify and clarify. There's lots of legends. There's one area we went to where they were talking about how there's a group of people that needed to get across the narrowest point of a bay that basically crossed Great Bear Lake, but it's the narrowest point.
And it would have been a really long way around or something like that.
Yeah, way around. And they needed to cross, and they were all hungry and starving, but they needed to get to the other side so that they can survive. And the quickest way was to go across the ice, which was really thin and long ways. And they asked all the powerful elders, to take us across, and they all kind of, they didn't say no, but they just kind of stand back, right? They asked this young kid, and they realized he had a kind of a beaver tooth on his neck, tied to his neck, and they asked him, and then he said, "Yeah, I could probably do it." They gave me a medicine of the water before, a beaver, right? So he decided to take them across, but he said, "Look, only step where I step. Don't step off that, and we'll make it across." And they started going across, the whole clan, and they did exactly what he said. But he said, when we get to the other side, don't look back till we get out of sight of behind us. And so they made it across, but the ice was breaking in and around them all over, but they weren't falling in. They were just kind of just following and they got to the other side, and 2 people decided to look back. They said, well, we're on the other side now. Should be okay to look back. And they literally turned into trees. Okay. And so they just kept going. So that was kind of okay, let's go look for these trees. And that was our, go check on it, right?
But also to go kind of explore that area with that story, you kind of got to go in the spring, I assume. Or
I went in the summer.
In the summer. Yeah. We got to go when there's ice.
I don't want to go on ice.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so there's lots like that. I mean, there's, Sir John Franklin wintered in Délı in 1825, 1826. And, it intrigued me. I like history.
Yeah.
I like old architecture and old engineering.
Yeah.
I like that stuff. It's just, I can go to cities that are old like that, and I can stand around and watch the city and all that for hours on end, days, and say, how did they do this? How did they do that? Right. So Sir John Franklin started to intrigue me. I thought, this guy fort is right on top of this hill, right in front of the hotel. They stayed there in 1825, 1826. We don't promote them because of the stuff that they've done with the locals and stuff like that. So we just kind of, okay, that's where he was. But later on, or even before that, not before that, but one of my relatives told a story about how how somebody came into a bush camp and literally pretty much died right away, like within a matter of weeks. And he had with him a bag of gold coins and a muzzle-loader gun, those old powder
like a musket
guns,
or whatever,
and then a little handgun, musket, and a Ruger. And he died. In the old days, well, we still kind of practice it, but when you die, usually we get rid of all your possessions. And back then, they buried that little handgun with him in that bag of gold coins. We think it's gold coins, but in slavery, they call it decoy, little round yellow coins, right? And they buried that with him. But they took the musket and they put it in a tree to mark where he was buried.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, we found that gun at some point, but that old guy told a story because he said he saw it when he was young. And he died in his 90s. And he told his son where this was, right? And his son died while he was in his 80s. So he passed the story on. We ended up finding the gun, and I saw it in the 90s, early 90s. And it was in the tree, just the way the story was and all that type of stuff. And I thought to myself, gold, way back then. I wonder if this guy ran away from Sir John Franklin's expedition with a musket and gold coins. And anyways, the gun came back. It was 1840 something. Well, damn it, that can't be from 1825 expedition. So fast forward and over time, we realize hockey historians are looking at hockey history and all that kind of stuff. And then we realized that Sir John Franklin wrote a letter and they found it. And in a letter in 1825, 1826, he was writing to his friend in England. He says, to pass the time, the men are playing ice hockey. And that's Great Bear Lake, eh?
Yeah.
So that's why there's this reference now that Délı is probably the birthplace of hockey in Canada.
Gotcha.
And so that's where that kind of story all originated. And it's in the letter, and it's really important, I guess, to associate ice and hockey together. So hockey historians, and I think they came out of New York and all that, basically saying, it looks like, you know, the first game in Canada actually happened up in the north. And Délı.
On the lake.
On the lake. So all of a sudden we're, you know, next year marks 200 years. So we want to maybe do a alumni classic on Great Bear Lake next March. So we'll see what happens. But, you know, they started looking for Sir John Franklin's ship when he got landlocked in the Northwest Passage when he went back to England from Délı.
Yeah.
And then he came back on the Northwest Passage. Well, all his men died, froze, starved.
Not great leadership. But
the reality is they all passed away. And I was talking to my buddy Morse again, and he said, you know, I told him this story about this musket and gold coins and all that. And he said, you know, my dad, and his dad lived to about 80. But he said, you know, my dad said when he was 12 years old around there, he was on the North Shore, they're playing. He said there was a kind of like a cache built like with logs, but it was a grave, he said. My dad said he could see inside there, he could see a guy in there. It looked like a military suit, maybe a police suit or whatever. Long blonde hair. I could see him, he said. And it got me thinking again now about Sir John Franklin and his crew, eh? Because if you look at where they met their demise in Joey Haven, that area, it's not that far from Ḳ'ahtı, right? And then we snowmobile from Great Bear Lake to Ḳ'ahtı. The longest journey is on Great Bear Lake. It's very short from the land on Great Bear Lake to Ḳ'ahtı to get to the Arctic Ocean. I said, wow, I wonder if that guy walked from Sir John Franklin's expedition.
It's possible.
But to be buried in a suit and all that kind of stuff, well, that makes sense because they're military from England, right, on this expedition. And I said, well, somebody buried him. Now, all of a sudden, that musket, 1840 something, makes sense.
Okay.
I wonder he buried him and then kept that walk and then
going.
ended up into that camp. So all of a sudden, I said, well, now I got a new thing that I got to go check out.
So you haven't gone and checked this out yet?
No. Well,
oh man, you're gonna have to come back and tell us how it goes.
Yeah. So it's those kind of things that intrigue me, and I've been kind of doing that just to have fun and learn about history and be able to tell a story if any of it is true, right?
Well, requires a lot of patience and attention to do what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because it's really easy to go, search on it, whatever. Yeah. And then just move on.
Just stay home.
Yeah.
No, it's been fun. It's been fun to go back after all these years to find yourself and then just go back to the boating and going back to the land and stuff like that. I'm not a big hunter, big fisherman. In the end, people ask me, how come you don't go ice fishing? I said, oh, well, I can't sit there all day and just fish. I said, if I'm hungry, I'll go get a fish and I'll come back, right?
Yeah.
When we were kids, me and my buddy Chris used to go check net when we were 10 years old. We'd go about 5 miles across the ice, check net every day. We had to check every day because we pull about 600 to 800 herring out of the lake a day.
That's crazy.
And we're only like 10 years old, going to open water every day.
Yeah.
In blizzards and minus 40.
So you weren't like jigging it under the ice there. No. You wouldn't go to the open water.
Yeah. To actually check a net that was close by there, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you have a boat to go check that net?
No, it was on the ice.
Okay.
Yeah. Wintertime.
Yeah.
So I said, I think I've done my fishing.
Yeah. That's enough fish.
It's enough fish.
I ate the best fish in my life in Great Bear Lake, or in Délı. It was. I was there with James McPherson and Jenny.
Yeah, good couple.
Yeah, it was awesome. And Auntie Patricia and David.
David.
It took us out in the boat and pulled up a bunch of fish, and I was like, wow, that's so crazy. They were so big. And we fried it up that evening, and they were just succulent.
Yeah.
And I love the atmosphere in Délı. It's like people were just dropping in, and they kind of see that you were cooking and come by and come hang out for a little bit and move on, and it really feels. It's a beautiful place.
Yeah,
absolutely.
A lot of our people always pride themselves on just helping one another and stuff like that. But when they have their cookouts, they can't wait for this time of the year, right? It's just everybody's cooking outside. Everybody drops by. Here's extra fish. It's cooked already. Go ahead. It's good. And then they start telling stories and laughing and joking around. All said and done, they go off. That person probably that wandered into your area probably went to the next one.
Yeah, ate more fish.
Ate more fish. But yeah, Jenny and James, they're doing quite a bit. They're two young couple that just got married, and Jenny's from our community, James is from Toledo.
Yeah,
and I'm really proud of them about being involved and trying to get into the bush. Jenny's doing lots in terms of trying to do workshops and mentor people, and basically build people's spirits up. And I think they're doing it right. They're doing it, trying to do it through the bush, right? So
yeah, I love both of their energies, both of their spirits, and how they're oriented. And what's most beautiful on top of it all is their commitment to each other and doing it simultaneously.
Yeah.
Well, both of them I want to have on and talk to them because I think they're remarkable people.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. Make sure you do. Yeah, even. David and Patricia too, like they're great people there too. So
oh yeah, I love that. Well, I dropped in the other time I was at Délı. They remembered me. I was like, oh my god, that's so good.
All right, on.
Yeah, and then they gave me way too much fish.
Well, it's never enough because what you do is you store it, and whenever you have guests over, you say, look, I'm gonna.
Well, it's like I can't cook a whole side of lake trout that big for just my family.
No,
you got to save it for a special occasion.
And we usually cut it up into chunks if you just want to do it with your family, right?
Yeah.
So that way, when you store it, you're not thawing out the whole trout just to eat a piece.
Totally.
Right. So
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's so cool. Well, well, it seems like you're an optimistic guy and you have a good sense of direction about where you want to take the community.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's. I'm going to be the chief for 4 years.
Yeah,
I'll do whatever I can during that, but I've been doing that since I was a young kid.
Sure.
Trying to guide my friends, trying to guide my family, trying to guide the community, and it's not so much guiding them, but at the same time, but just kind of helping out, doing whatever I can to make sure that we keep moving forward. Mm-hmm. And 4 years, I'll be the chief. Who knows what happens after that? But I'm sure no matter what I'm doing after that, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, right? So
is a possible second term a thing, or I don't know how it works.
Yeah, well, second term is always possible. And it starts with me putting my name up, but we'll see. I mean,
well, that's a ways away still.
Yeah, still a ways away. Never know.
Yeah.
Elders say, if you get up in the morning and you're still alive, great. Enjoy the day. You never know what happens during the day. It never happens.
That's more wise than it sounds.
Yeah. Well, that's what people say. You gotta, at home, you gotta enjoy life.
Yeah.
Right. And you only have one, and enjoy it. But also, do the right things as you go along. Especially if you have children, you got to try to make sure that you get them ready for the next journey. Because as soon as you have children, all of a sudden it's not about you.
No, nothing's about you anymore.
Nothing about you anymore, and you know that, right? So what journey are you going to prepare them for?
Yeah.
Right? Well, you got to look at the environment.
Yeah.
The elders talk about how the north will get hot, the south will get cold. Right? They talk about climate change a long time ago, even before I was born.
Well, that must have been stories that they heard about it being so different before, you know?
Well, the prophecy, the old timer that died in 1940, it's A.A., they call him, he predicted water will become the most valuable resource in the world. And that the only water available in the world in the future will be from Great Bear Lake. And people will come. They got no choice. And the fish in the water is the only fish that will be available for food in the world. So everything on top will die. Right? So we got to prepare ourselves for that. Hopefully we don't hit that, but in the end, if you look at the rivers, water's running dry already. And they even talk about how one day they'll walk across Mackenzie River. Well, no water, I guess.
Yeah.
Right? So it's those type of stories that work with us to try to prepare for the future.
Well, and it's always worth preparing for worst case scenario.
Yeah. Right now, all we prepare for is the almighty dollar.
Yeah.
Right? Well, money will have no monetary value when we hit this stage, right?
Yeah.
It's the world's going to be different.
Well, and that's why it's so important to have a strong culture.
Yeah.
Because if you're only, obsessing over money so much, and then that you don't have something to keep you together outside of that, that's when things go really poorly and really bad. But if you have an identity communally, then you know that you got to take care of each other.
Yeah. If money is all that drives you, then you lose your connection to your kids, you lose your connection to your family, you lose your connection to really, where you're going, right?
Yeah.
Because the old timers say, you can't take it with you, eh? What are you going to do? Make life easier for your next children? Well, if the money's worthless, your children are lost. Yeah. Because you can transfer the life skills.
Yeah, that's so much more valuable. Your values and your motivation and your direction and your identity is so much more important.
Yeah. I remember an old guy told me a story about how he was talking about water with the government, and all our people are slavey speaking, so they need translators and stuff like that. So
sure.
They translated for him, and the government said, we're here, we're going to be we're the boss of the water, and they're basically exercising their authority, jurisdiction over water, and our elders are wise, eh? And
they've been around.
They've been around. So you're going to be the boss of the water? He says. Yeah, really? He says, well, when the water goes down 2 feet, make sure you're the boss. You put it back up 2 feet.
Yeah, exactly.
In other words, he's saying there's only one guy that could do that. Right? And you're telling me you could do that now?
Yeah, you got something loose up there, buddy. You're definitely not the boss of the water.
Yeah, you could be the boss when you could do that, he says.
Yeah, exactly. There's something to shoot for.
Yeah, but it's a real good, simple story. But
that is a good story.
If you really think about it, it applies to almost a lot of things that governments have been doing, right?
Yeah.
Like we're doing climate change. Guess what? We're going to tax you.
Yeah.
First time in your life you're getting taxed for air, and you think, what the hell? I never thought I'd ever get taxed for air.
Well, and the thing that, it's like every country affects the atmosphere.
Yeah, and it's crazy. And the reality is that if everything that we've done prior to what we're doing right now must not be working.
Yeah.
Like a simple Cadillac converter in your vehicle.
Yeah.
We put that in every vehicle that you paid for so you could burn fossil fuels clean.
Yeah.
So you're telling me, well, that didn't work, but you made me pay lots for that.
Yeah.
And you got all these fuel additives, and you're telling me to pay for all those fuel additives.
Oh yeah, no, we got it. We have it right this time. Trust me.
And now the only one is let's just charge you for the air now, right? There's got to be solutions, but you got to get people together and sit down and say, what can we do, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure they do a lot of that stuff, but I think a lot of it should come from sitting down with the elders and the old people that literally live off the land.
Well, I admire, that's one thing about Indigenous culture that I admire so much is the attention towards the elders. Because I don't know, in North American culture, that's not really the case. Elderly people are viewed as a burden often, and and youth is worshipped.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, really? That's fleeting.
Yeah, I laugh at that too, because some of my workshops, when I talk to people, I always say, look, you always talk to an elder. If you're struggling, talk to an elder. Why? Well, the elder had a lot of girlfriends already. He knows how to handle that situation, right? So you're struggling with your girlfriend or your breakup and all that type of stuff. Talk to him.
Yeah.
Right.
He doesn't know.
Yeah. He knows how to take you out on the land. He lived out in the bush, right? Talk to him. You're going to get married. Well, you better get some advice from the elder, because he did that too already.
Yeah.
So basically trying to explain to them that he actually already lived life.
Yeah. It's bizarre how that's not so obvious.
Yeah, and it's so strange that we won't go to the elder, because if you need advice, your parents are your elders.
Yeah.
Right? And then they try very hard to, stick handle you and say, well, this is how you should do things. But we know we don't want to listen.
Yeah. Well, in my experience, I have a very good relationship with my parents, and they've been through it all. Everything that I'm doing, they've been through it, right? So it's invaluable. Even if I do it differently, it's still worth hearing.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they can make it more fun when they tell their stories, right?
Yeah, or especially when you fuck it up and then they tell, I told you, buddy. I told you it was going to go that way.
Yeah, it's going to happen. They don't want to listen, but that's okay. You could learn from it.
Well, it's been a pleasure to sit down with you, and I wanted to extend the invitation. If you identify anyone who you think would be valuable to come on and sit down, I would love to have elders on, and they can just come and tell me whatever story they want to hear, and we can kind of get it out there. And I think that would be super cool.
Yeah.
And you're obviously have an open invitation to come back, and we can discuss any projects you're working on or issues that you want to talk about or anything. By all means, you're super welcome.
Yeah, you were at home there, and I've trying to work on building a communication department where we have all of this stuff set up.
Sure.
So anything you can do to help us we're very interested. We have a radio station there.
Yeah.
We got big room now that I give the staff.
Cool.
And said, set up your radio station here, set it up as a studio.
Yeah.
And do whatever you got to do to get it modernized.
Yeah.
You'll bring elders in here. They'll tell their stories.
I think it's the coolest.
And, if we could do this there and help them set it up and get it ready.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it, yeah.
There's no reason not to.
Yeah.
And is it possible to put this kind of a thing on your guys' radio station?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? Yeah. That would be so cool. I think that, and do people kind of tune in from home too?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Everybody still listens.
Well, let's do that. That's great.
Sounds good. Right on. Thanks,
Well,
Josh.
Danny, it was really wonderful to sit down with you.
You too.
Cheers.
Bye.